Hey guys, here today showing you how to replace the intake manifold gasket and a throttle body gasket on your 2003 Chevy Tahoe. This is the 5.3 V8 super common motor. It's found in pretty much any Chevy Tahoe, Suburban, Silverado, GMC Sierra, Yukons. All the 4.8s, 5.3, 6.0s from 2000 to about 2006. Even into the Gen 4s from 2007 to like 10 or 12 or so. These are all really similar engines. They all share pretty much the same intake manifold gaskets. So if you have been having trouble with a really rough idle in the morning, P0300 codes, random misfire codes, chances are your intake manifold gaskets are bad and your throttle body gasket is bad as well. I just replaced them together. So if you have been chasing that code and you're at your wit's end, I want you to make sure you've changed all 8 spark plugs first. If that solves your issue, then by all means that's great. But if you're still having random misfires, if the car is idling like crap in the morning and then for some reason it gets better when it warms up, I'm going to guarantee that your intake manifold gaskets and throttle body gaskets are bad. So yeah, this will definitely help your problem. Okay, so the first thing you want to do before you do anything, you'll be dealing with a little bit of fuel pressure here when you have to remove the fuel line and disconnect it. You could just come right here. There's a little Schrader valve right here that you can release the pressure with, like a flathead screwdriver. You could just stick it in there and put a rag there and catch some of the fuel. Me personally, I like to just start the truck and go into the fuse box that's over there. I already pulled the lid off. If you just read on that, there'll be a relay that says F pump or fuel pump. It's pretty much, it's in the middle of the box. It's a small relay. What I do is just start the truck up and I just pull that relay out so the fuel pump stops working. And then obviously if there's no fuel, it's not going to run, so it'll die shortly after that. And there will be no pressure in the fuel rail. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And it's dead. So that's as easy as it is to do that. Now there'll be no pressure in the fuel rail. Next, you can remove the 2 hose clamps. There's one right here, 8mm clamp for the intake. Also another one right here, attaching to the box. I like to pull this side out first. I need a little persuasion. Okay, and if you notice right here, there will be a hose clamp that's holding this on. Go on and don't disconnect the hose clamp from the hose. Just pop the whole clamp out of the intake itself, and then you can just wiggle this free and take it out. Okay, the next thing you want to do is to disconnect if you have an electronic throttle body like this one, you can just disconnect this connector. There is a gray tab right here that needs to get slid backwards first before you can actually push the tab. So this little gray tab, sometimes it can be a little troublesome to get back. Well, you don't really push it all the way off, but you see what happened there. Anyway, they need to slide back, and then you can go on ahead and push the tab and then remove it like so. You can just hang this to the side for now. That's fine. The throttle body is held on by 3 10mm nuts. So there's also a radiator hose that goes from the throttle body up here to the radiator, so just do be careful that you don't damage it. There'll be another one that's on the bottom as well. So pretty much we're just trying to loosen this up and just kind of let it hang here. Just sit down right here, it's fine. That way when we go to remove the throttle body, it won't be attached. I'm doing this basically so you don't have to deal with disconnecting these radiator hoses and losing coolant and all that and whatnot. So we'll grab a 10mm socket and take these 3, 1 on the top and 2 on the bottom. Take those 3 nuts off. Excuse the lighting if it is getting a little dark, sorry. So now that you got the throttle body here loose, you can go ahead and just pull the throttle body back. Okay, we took the 3 bolts or nuts off the throttle body. You can see it's now loose. There is 2 hoses, as I mentioned earlier, that run underneath the throttle body. The one on the right side near the radiator is preventing you from actually pulling the throttle body completely off of the intake manifold. That's okay for now. Once we loosen up the intake manifold, we'll be able to, you know, maneuver the intake manifold backward just slightly, just enough to relieve, to get the throttle body off the studs. And then when we reinstall it, we'll be able to maneuver it back on. I'm trying my best not to take off any coolant hoses if I don't have to. If we have to, we'll cross that road when we get there. But for now, it's fine. If you look directly behind the intake manifold, there is one small breather hose that needs to get detached. It's just directly behind the intake manifold right here. You can just use a flathead screwdriver and you should be able to push that line off. Also, you can go on ahead and disconnect this here purge valve. You just kind of pick the tab up and you just pretty much just use a flathead screwdriver to release this tab here, and you can just go ahead and loosen that up. I'm not even going to mess with this. There's just one 8mm bolt that's holding down this whole assembly here, so I'm just going to loosen the 8mm bolt, and then this whole purge valve will just come straight out. Just loosen that guy up, and this whole guy will just come out just like this, and you can just set this down to the side or maneuver it out of the way as you need to. Be careful because this is a hard plastic line. Sometimes those tend to break. So you need to remove these 2 8mm screws that are up here on this plastic cover so you can get access to the, or excuse me, those are not 8s, those are 10s. Remove these 2 guys. You can see that exposed a lot more. That exposed a lot more of the wiring harness. So as you see, the wiring harness just comes straight across the top like this. You really don't need to disconnect it. There is a map sensor back here in the back that you do need to disconnect. Same like you did in the front. You just push the tab off and it'll release itself off the back. Then really the only other things you need to worry about are the fuel injector connectors. There obviously are 8 of them. And then the only other thing we need to disconnect is we can remove this here blue connector right here. It just pulls straight off. Go on ahead and disconnect this connector as well. The rest of that can just hang off into the back. And pretty much the rest of this harness is actually just free. The only thing that's holding it, the only thing that's in the only wiring that needs to be taken off now are the fuel injector connectors and the fuel line. Also, this right here will just, you know, maneuver this around here as we need to maneuver the manifold off. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to take off the fuel injector clips right now. Okay, so this is one of the fuel injector clips that I took off. That's right here on the front. If you look at the connector closely, it does have a big plastic tab like this here. You need to, pretty much like the throttle body guy, you need to pull this guy back like that. And then that little tab right there you see in the middle, you can then depress that and pull the fuel injector clip off. So all of them do the same thing. If you find that you still can't push this here tab all the way in, go on ahead and just pretty much just tug on this plastic piece, just tug on that and just pull it out completely. As you saw on the throttle body in the beginning, you saw I pushed too hard and the whole clip came off. If you still can't push this here tab, even after you've lifted this clip up, go on ahead and just pull this big plastic clip completely out. Just pull it out. You're not going to damage anything. And then you should be able to definitely get it out. I just did this on one. You need to do it on all 8 injectors. Obviously 4 on the left side, 4 on the right side. You can see there's another one straight back there I'm going to do right now. So go on ahead and remove all of those. This here, the hose that runs back to the top of the valve cover gasket for the breather, just disconnect it from the back. Just disconnect it from the back of the, disconnect the hose from the top of the valve cover gasket, or the valve cover that's back there. It's easy, it'll just pull straight out. The only other vacuum hose we'll have to deal with is the brake booster hose. Sometimes you guys will have different hoses. Right here is what I'm talking about. It's easiest to disconnect it from here if you have this type of style. Some other cars will have this hose just go straight to the brake booster. Either way, they're just hose clips. Just disconnect here the hose clamps and remove this hose. And then after that, we can go on ahead and start loosening up the bolts to remove the intake manifold. Only thing we have left now is to disconnect the fuel supply line, which you'll need a 3/8 quick disconnect line. That's made for fuel lines. Looks something like this. Opens, it slides straight onto the fuel line, and as you push it back, it will disconnect the line. There's these, and there's also this type as well. I don't know what I did with them actually. Oh, these right here. There's also these kind that will work as well. You'd need a 3/8 size. So if you look straight back right here, there is a metal line right here that's going in. There's a metal retaining clip here that you need to lift it up on the back side here like this and just kind of pull it out. This is just a safety clip so the line doesn't pop off. Then what you want to do is you take your quick disconnect tool and you slip it over this line, and you close it and push it backwards into this. If you push it into the line at the same time while you're pulling this fuel line backwards, it'll slip off. There might be some fuel that comes out of there, but should be pretty easy to do. After you disconnect the top fuel supply line, there is one directly below that, so in total there's 2 that you need to release. So go on ahead and take the other one off as well. You don't need to remove the fuel rails from the intake manifold. You should be able to reach around and get all of the 8mm bolts that are holding down the intake. There will be 5 per side. Just straight, they're all just straight down here. You can't miss them. You go on ahead and loosen all those up, and then we can go on ahead and get this intake manifold out of here. Okay, so now after you've got the fuel lines off and you've loosened up all the 10 8mm screws, you'll be able to just lift and maneuver the intake manifold out. Like I said, you want to go ahead and pick it up and push it back as far as you can. That way you can release the throttle body. You can already see I have the throttle body pulled off here. And then pretty much you just need to maneuver it around all of the items, all of the pieces that you have taken off. I remove this here hose. That'll help you get it out. There will be a lot of fuel that drops as you're lifting this up. Unfortunately, that's coming out of the rail. But do your best to fish all the vacuum lines around and just be able to maneuver this guy out. Okay, now you can see we have the valley exposed. If you want to go on ahead and replace your knock sensors, now is a good time to do this. Obviously the knock sensors are here and here. You can replace this valley cover gasket too, because it tends to leak oil a lot, but I'm not doing any of that in this video. I am going to wipe all of the intake ports off clean to make sure that we'll get in there and just try and clean it up in general. You can see there's a lot of trash and debris in here as always. So yeah, do your best to clean this up before you go on ahead and stick anything else on. Okay guys, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the throttle body gasket and the intake manifold gaskets. Obviously you can tell I've already taken them off. These actually are, you need to make sure that you get the correct intake manifold gaskets, because some of these do come with a rigid metal gasket, like a solid metal gasket. All this parts will be metal. The more common ones are these plastic ones. All they do is just snap on. They just snap straight on to the manifold. That way when you flip the manifold upside down, they don't fall off. To take them off is super easy. You just loosen up the clips and they just pop off. It's pretty self-explanatory. But you do want to make sure you get the correct gaskets. The Felpro part number is MS96587. Like I said, these will work for all of the, pretty much all these LS based engines, 4.8s, 5.3s, 6.0s. They look like these, look just like the other one. They just snap into place as well. Before you put the new gaskets on, you want to make sure you wipe off all of this area. Careful that you don't get debris into the injector nozzles, because even just a little bit of dirt in there will cause them to get clogged up. So if you so happen to get some in there, just take some brake cleaner or carb cleaner or something and just spray the nozzles off before you stick anything back in there. And then the throttle body gasket, you also do want to make sure you get the correct one. This is also a Felpro part, 61070. This is mostly, I think, for the electronic throttle bodies. They look like this. You just use a pick to remove the old one, and then you just push this one into place. Pretty easy. This stuff's super simple. The only other ones, if you had a cable operated throttle body, I believe your throttle body gasket will just be just a circle. But nonetheless, just take them off. It's pretty easy. Go ahead and pop the new ones into place. They just pop straight down into position. This guy goes on like this. Pop it down into place. Just like so, super easy. Then we'll go on ahead and put the new throttle body gasket on as well. That guy, and then just push it on. Make sure you push it completely into position. As you can tell when you're taking it out, it's a little cumbersome, so you will want to go ahead and just maneuver it back into place and set it down. And then we'll go on ahead and tighten up the bolts. I'll show you the tightening sequence for those. If you have a torque wrench, that would be best. Or an inch-pound wrench, that will also be good. We'll go over that here in a minute when I get it into position. Okay, so you can see I got the intake manifold back into position. Before you go on ahead and tighten anything up, you want to make sure that you can start all of the bolts by hand. All of the 8mm bolts, make sure you can start them all by hand first before you start to torque anything down. So that means just going around and make sure that you can start them all, and then after that you want to go on ahead and torque them down to the correct torque value, so that way you don't have any intake manifold leaks. There is a sequence to do them. Pretty much you start in the middle of the manifold. Bolt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like that. You're just starting in the middle and working your way outward, or you work your way towards the back, work your way towards the front. You want to do this in 2 passes. The first pass you want to torque everything down to 44 inch-pounds. So you want to make sure that you get that torqued correctly. I highly suggest using an inch-pound torque wrench because while you could convert that to foot-pounds by dividing by 12, you'll get 3.6 foot-pounds. Most torque wrenches aren't that accurate, that low. I mean, there may be some pretty high-end ones that are pretty accurate. If you can get yourself an inch-pound torque wrench, that will work the best. And like I said, the first pass, going 1, 2 in the middle, 3, 4 right here in the next sets, just working your way towards the back and towards the front. Don't start in the front and go to the back. Don't start in the back and come to the front. Start in the middle and work your way outward. First pass is 44 inch-pounds. The next pass will be, the second pass will be 89 inch-pounds. So make sure that you get everything torqued to 44 and then go on ahead and go to 89. And then after that, pretty much everything is just putting the stuff back together. I'm gonna go on ahead and reconnect the fuel lines now so they stop leaking because it just smells in here. Those simply just press back onto the fittings you had them. And then you wanna go on ahead and put these retaining clips back on. You'll hook them in to the front and then just snap this guy down onto the line. This little circle here in the back. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, after you've got the intake manifold torqued back down to 89 inch-pounds total. First pass was 44 inch-pounds, second pass was 89. Pretty much you just go on ahead and reconnect everything that you disconnected. Don't forget the map sensor in the back to connect that. Don't forget to also connect this here blue connector on the side. That was a knock sensor that goes down to the bottom. You can put the little plastic cover right here that goes back on top. You can go on ahead and reattach that and put that guy back on as you found it. Pretty much just sets right back on top like so. Reconnect this vacuum hose that goes right behind the throttle body. Just push that guy back onto place. If you did have an EGR, it would be right here. EGR pipe would be right here. Don't forget to reconnect this hose back to the purge valve or purge solenoid. It just pops back straight down onto place like this, and then it's just held on by one 8mm screw that goes right here. You need to reconnect all 8 injector harness clips. Also need to reconnect the throttle body connector. If you did disconnect the alternator like I did over here, reconnect that. And just pretty much putting back everything they did. The fuel lines, you need to those just simply push back on, and you put the retaining screws back on. Yeah, you pretty much just put everything back together as you found it, and then we can go on ahead and put the engine cover back on and put the intake back on. So we'll go on ahead and just knock that out real quick. Okay, so I got everything back connected, just like so. You want to go ahead and tighten on the throttle body back into place. It's the 3 10mm nuts. Don't forget to get those on there. If you did pull out the fuel pump relay, don't forget to reinsert that back into position. And then pretty much all you do is set down the intake back into place. Just grab it. Don't forget this little hose clamp right here. Make sure you get the hose all situated back, and then just stick this back into the intake. Pretty much you're going to take this guy. This hose goes on top of this guy over here, so don't forget that. Like so. Push that back on and tighten the 2 8mm clamps. Then you go ahead and slide the engine cover back on into position, and that'll be that. So this is a pretty easy job. You could probably get done with it in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so. If you have any comments or questions, please ask them in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the way out. I really appreciate you guys watching the videos, and I do my best to respond to everybody in the chat. You know, unless people are just being rude, I won't, or you'll just get a rude response back, honestly. So I try my best to be as detailed as possible, and if I miss things, you know, obviously I'm not perfect, so please don't beat me up about that. All right, I'll see you guys next time.